Hey, let me show you something. Come on. Come on. Here, have a look at this. Right here. Okay, welcome back. Chaotically Intolerant, episode 113. I know this is not a typical thing, but we have Michael Seff on the phone. He was not able to be on video today, but you still do get to hear him. So, welcome, Michael, or welcome back, I guess. It's been, 4 weeks now?
Yeah, too long, man.
Definitely. It was. I wanted to maybe do last week because of the little rivalry game that we got to have, but it didn't work out. But man, I mean, what a
That's
game
okay.
that was.
Yeah, I would have been pretty bummed about that one anyway. But hey, at least the Ravens bounced back. It was a tough day for the Colts after making all that noise in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, we can start with them. We'll just start and then we'll move on from there. The Colts break my heart again. Um, Shane Steichen, I'm gonna be honest, this is actually kind of a hot take. I feel like because people are morons. Shane Steichen is a horrendous play caller. Horrible, horrible play caller. Um, you have the ball. They just tied up the game. Actually, I can go back to that. The Colts get the ball with about 7 minutes left, down 8, and they're just lackadaisical. They're basically saying we're going to run time off the clock. They're assuming they're going to get the 2, which you can't assume you get the 2. What they should have done, because your defense is playing well, you go down, you score as quickly as you possibly can. Go for 2. If you don't get it, you're still going to have 2 timeouts and a lot of time left to stop them on a drive, get the ball back, and go down and score again. Well, it works out. The Colts end up going down and scoring with under 2 minutes left. So they tie the ball game up. They get the 2. They ended up getting the ball back, within like a few minutes, barely. I mean, barely a few minutes. They get the ball back with 134, 43. They run 19 seconds off the clock in 3 pass plays, deep pass plays. Didn't even try to run the ball once to run the clock down. They're on the 35, so they don't have to get a lot of yardage. Then they punt it back. They barely stop Stafford. They get the ball back, and then they kneel it, and then they lose in overtime. I mean, you got to try to run the ball because your Zach Moss was getting 3.9 yards per carry at that point. He was running the ball pretty well in the second half. I mean, just horrendous play calling. And then Gus Bradley has done a great job with the defense, but he loves playing zone coverage, just the softest zone coverage ever, and just leaving the middle wide open. And it drives me crazy. That's why we lost, but I blame Shane Steichen. I hate him. He is mini Frank Reich to me. So that's all I got for my rant. That's all.
Yeah, but is there a good takeaway for Richardson and the comeback effort?
They're able to do that despite the terrible coaching. That is
right.
That is fantastic. That makes me happy.
Well, the Rams have been a weird team this year. I figured out if they're actually good or not. But the Colts, they seem like they play well on the road, and they haven't played well in their home games.
Yeah, I don't really get that.
But Richardson, yeah, I mean, look, so rookie head coach. Remember, we were joking before the season. We were like, "Well, God, this Jonathan Gannon must be an idiot. And who would want to run through a brick wall for him after that speech?" And then the Cardinals have played pretty well, and now it's Shane Steichen is the ex-Eagles coordinator who is drawing your ire.
Yeah, I think Me more than anybody else. I've made some, comments on Colts posts after the loss, and I'm very active on Twitter during the games. Go check out at Chaotically Intolerant or something on Twitter. And people just they love the Colts head coach. They love how he coaches. They love his quote aggressiveness. There's aggressiveness and there's stupidity. And in my opinion, he thinks he has the Philadelphia Eagles. I've said it before and I'll say it again. He thinks he has the offense that they have. He doesn't. He tries to run the ball, or he tries to use Anthony Richardson to run the ball, which is stupid. I feel like a good running quarterback only uses his legs to extend the play, and when the play breaks down, he uses them to get yardage and then slides. Well, they design runs for Anthony Richardson, and he's been hurt. He was hobbled today. He had a concussion against Houston, and he left the game hurt against Jacksonville at the end of the game. That's 3 games, 3 injuries. It's not a good look for a team that has a history of first-round quarterbacks getting hurt and retiring.
Yeah, well, they need to be careful. They really need to be careful. You got a young quarterback. I mean, what were your thoughts on Gardner Minshew though? After delivering the win against the Ravens.
Oh, I love him. I thought he should have started this week. You ride the hot hand. You say, okay, well, Richardson might be back, but we're not going to rush him back. And we want the best guy out there right now. Obviously, Richardson proved me wrong, but I still wouldn't have minded if Minshew started, even if I knew that's what we would miss out on. I think he's a serviceable quarterback in the league, not a backup, a serviceable quarterback. Like, we forget he has franchise records over in Jacksonville. How is he not getting a starting position somewhere else? It amazes me. Like the Jets, how is he not starting for the Jets right now? Because they're losing 17-2 to the Chiefs at this point. I don't know how he hasn't, how they haven't gotten to go and get him.
17-2. This reminds me of when the Falcons got 2 points in a playoff game against the Giants in the Meadowlands. Also, like almost worse that the Jets have 2 points and then they're getting shut out. But I hear you. I mean, I think I was surprised the Jets have. I mean, even if Wilson plays okay, like these next few games, you're telling me Minshew's not a guy you'd want to push the envelope to try to get him in the building and spark things. I mean, I think he'd be the kind of guy that New York would love. I've always liked Gardner Minshew. I think he's just one of those guys. I don't really know how else to say. He just brings energy. He's just a colorful personality. Kind of, almost not larger than life, but larger than his skill set. And I think it just kind of elevates the guys around him. So I'm with
Absolutely.
you. I don't. Little surprised that they didn't give him a crack at it today. But hey, look, Richardson showed poise. He gets them back. He gets the game into overtime after being down 23. I mean, thinks that that effort goes for naught in a loss. But I think the Colts. I mean, look, if I told you they were going to be 2-2 after 4 games, you'd probably be okay with that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not an easy schedule either. I mean, you look at it, you have Jacksonville, who I still think is mid. They're not a Super Bowl contender. They will make the playoffs. I'm doubting their ability to win the division at this point because we'll talk about those games later. I don't think they're that good. I've always said it. Maybe they're just starting slow. But then, you go to play Houston, which Houston, their offensive line struggled. It's a good matchup for the Colts in the Houston games just because of where our strengths versus their weaknesses. And then you look at the Ravens. I mean, a sloppy game. You win against the Ravens, and then you lose a game against a Rams team where you really can't tell if they're good or bad. But I have a strong feeling they're pretty good because Puka Nacua is a fucking monster.
Yeah. Well, I think that the win against the Ravens is the one that the Colts can hold on to for right now, as sort of just that was a gritty win. I mean, it was a lot of it was just Harbaugh. Again, you complained about Steichen's coaching, and how about Harbaugh, and how about the Ravens' offensive scheme being basically running into a lot of the same problems that they did with Greg Roman. It's just lack of imagination. But the Colts looked like they were getting up for dead in that game last week. And after that safety, I mean, the game should have been over. So I think this is, to me, I think this is a good 2-2 for the Colts. I don't think it's like a fluky, squeak by a, third string quarterback kind of 2-2. I mean, they have a couple of road wins. And now, you look at beating Houston as kind of Houston, what they did to the Steelers today.
Yeah. Let's talk about the rest of the games. We'll go into AFC South. We'll go into Jaguars, Falcons. The London game, the Toy Story thing was awesome. That was so cool.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be dorky. It was not. It was fantastic. Kids loved it, apparently. And the Falcons got a win against, the Jaguars got a win against Falcons, 23-7. The Falcons, Desmond Ridder is not it. I'm sorry. I've said it before. I have Kyle Pitts on my fantasy team, which is stupid. They need to put in Heineke. Heineke is the guy. The Falcons' defense is too good to be wasted by Desmond Ridder.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, when I was looking at Ritter's numbers from last year, I was kind of just flabbergasted. It just felt like he has game manager written all over
Absolutely.
him. He just doesn't, I don't know. He just doesn't have, you're right, franchise quarterback. Doesn't have that it factor. He doesn't have that edge. And Atlanta has, they got a good running game. They got some playmakers in the passing game, but they just don't have the guy to get them the football. So, yeah, Heineke, love Heineke. I mean, I really do. I think he really gave the Commanders a spark, both in 2020. He led them in that playoff game where they gave a tussle. Last year he had a nice run. He's just one of those guys that everybody loves to count on. It's like one of people's favorite activities to just count out Taylor Heineke. But I think they got to make the switch. I think today was brutal for Atlanta.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Bills Dolphins. Bills 48, Dolphins 20. It looked like they were going to go score for a while in the beginning. It was 14-14, I think, in the end of the first quarter. And then the Bills, I think, just stepped on their throats. They said, hold on a second. I know they scored 20, or I know they scored 70 against Denver, but wait, we can't overestimate what this Dolphins team is. And I think the Bills also kind of proved, hey, we're not done. We're not dead yet. Because honestly, I thought they were dead. The last 3 games, really the first 2 were kind of like meh. And I was ready to dance on their graves. But again, they might win that division.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think the AFC East took a big turn today. I think the Bills losing to the Jets. Look, in Week 1, I hate to say you can almost forgive anything that happens in Week 1 of an NFL season, but it just happened. It was a bad game. Buffalo's doing this without Von Miller. I want to see what, does that make their defense? Does that put the defense? When they lost Von Miller, it put their defense. It knocked them down a peg, and I think they'd lost Micah Hyde last year, right? If I'm not mistaken. And they just did, when it came to the postseason, they got pushed around by Cincinnati. They got pushed around by Miami too in the postseason, even though they won. That was, remember, Skylar Thompson started that game and they gave up 31 points or something. Yeah. So the Bills offense, obviously that's the takeaway. They scored 48 points, but the defense is what's going to ultimately, I think, separate them from the other teams in that division. And they just put, the offense was relentless. They put the clamps down on Miami. Because remember last year, I mean, they played 3 really good games with the Dolphins. I think they were all decided by 2 or 3 points, if I'm not mistaken, including that playoff game with Skylar Thompson. And now today, Miami's coming off 70 points. You had to figure the offense would probably left some of those points on the field last week against Denver, but you didn't think the defense was going to give up 48 to Buffalo. So, yeah, I think Buffalo sent a pretty strong message today. Absolutely. I think in that division right now that until proven otherwise, they are the top team, and they got to feel really good about where they are just in general at top of the
AFC. Quick update, I guess, for the AFC East. Patrick Mahomes just threw an interception. It is 17-5 Kansas City right now. The Jets are in KC territory, though. All right. Dolphins also lost to Ron Armstead today. big loss for the line. I don't know what his status will be next week, but I know he went down and he walked through the tunnel. So they really can't lose anybody on their offensive line. And Teron Armstead is a injury liability, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you hear offensive line, you just immediately think about Tua and concussions. You don't even think about the players who get hurt. You just think, oh my God, is this mean that we're gonna have to really worry about Tagovailoa's health, long term? But Miami's human, came back to earth. But I was just surprised that it was a completely one-sided game in the second half. I don't think anyone expected that. Except, like I said, you might have expected a little bit of an offensive letdown, but you certainly didn't expect Miami's defense, which generally early in the season plays well. I don't know what, historically, usually when the games are in Miami, especially, this one was, of course, in Buffalo. But Miami's, history of having second half swoons is usually because their defense just starts to crumble. But anyway, yeah, that was that. Yeah.
I've said it before. This is the year the Dolphins have to do it. They really don't have to go anywhere up north or anywhere cold. After maybe like October, really. They get a lot of home games late and a lot of games just in domes or in non-snow area. This is the year they have to win the division because I can't see them doing it if they have to go up north to New England or Buffalo.
Yeah, well, that's always been the issue for Miami, more than even other warm weather teams. I mean, even when the Bucs won their two Super Bowls, they did it winning in cold weather in championship. But for some reason, Miami has always been a team that just never looks comfortable playing in the cold.
I think it's the teal. I think it's like the Miami colors. It doesn't mesh with the white.
Right. Right. Well, it could be. It just has they have a summery feel. It's like they're wearing summer clothes in winter, and everyone says you can't wear white after Labor Day, but the Dolphins are wearing, teal after Christmas. It just doesn't feel very playoff like. And I've been to, a postseason game in Miami when they beat your Colts back in the day. And it just, I don't know, it's playoff football and Miami or in Miami. It's not, they're not synonymous. I mean, the Dolphins have not been to an AFC Championship game since the early 90s. There's a big monkey on their back. I mean, it's not Minnesota Twins level.
They can get that off this year.
They can. They got the right team on their schedule coming up. But, Miami, look, they got whacked. I just want to see how they respond to this. I think if Mike McDaniel is the offensive mastermind, we think he'll make the adjustments. The defense will play better. Or if this is a sign of bigger problems, then we'll start to see the Dolphins do what they usually do, get off to a good start. Because was it last year or 2 years ago? They were 3-0, I think, right? And then they kind of swooned as usual, but then they actually caught themselves right at the end of the season.
I think it was last year. I think last year they
the one where Tagovailoa got knocked out in Cincinnati in their fourth game, and then they got hammered by the Jets, I think, and then they lost to Minnesota. They went from 3-0 to 3-3 or 3-4, like real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Broncos Bears. This was the battle for the number one pick. I'll say this to the Bears fans. You guys actually showed some offense. Justin Fields, 335, 4 touchdowns. And you are in line to have the number 1 and the number 2 pick with Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. coming out in the draft. So let's clap it up for the Bears. Congratulations. You guys have the number 1 and 2 pick. The Broncos, Russ has to get benched. I mean, I know they scored a lot of points. It's really not his fault, but Sean Payton hates Russell Wilson. He was not the quarterback he would have wanted. He's going to get benched at some point. And I thought it was going to be today.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll say this before I talk to Russell Wilson, but I'm happy that the Broncos defense made a big play that basically got them back in the game, because I think they'd given up, about 98 points over the span of just over 6 quarters of football. I mean, in 7. That's not even like that's video game level bad. Like when somebody puts a cheat code on. So the defense, as horrifically bad as they were, for the defense to have a big hand in the comeback, I think that probably gives a little sigh of relief to Sean Payton. But yeah, I don't know what I mean. Wilson's numbers today were pretty good. I think he had 3 TDs, no, and he made some plays when he had to. I don't know. I mean, you don't think Sean Payton can coax some more good games out of Russell Wilson? Obviously, they're playing the Bears today. It's hard to tell, but where are they going to go? What direction?
Tank. He wants Caleb Williams. He wants a fresh start. I think that's really what he wants, is just a fresh start. And if he can get Caleb Williams, that's about as fresh of a start as you could have. He told Russ to stop kissing babies. I mean, he just and Sean Payton just seems angry. His press conference after the loss against Miami, he was just an asshole, complete asshole. Just not a great. I've ever since the Bounty Gate thing, I've really not liked the guy, and I think he's just really just adding to my disdain of who he is.
You're talking, Sean Payton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think he can get anything out.
I never thought too much about it, when I was watching him all those years in New Orleans, but he's pretty pompous. I mean, he really, it almost seems like he's coming off more pompous now than when he was with the Saints.
I think he
really
is.
Liked him. Yeah, people really liked him that's the team that kind of turned everything around after Katrina, and him and Drew Brees being joined at the hip, and Saints were always a team that was easy to root for because because everything that they went through. But I don't know, and he got divorced. He's married a much younger, more attractive woman. I don't know, his whole personality shift. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know. That could have something to do with it. And then all that stuff about Nathaniel Hackett, and I'd say that the Jets may have the same record at the end of the night that the Broncos do, but start thinking about it and what is the situation in Denver any better than the situation in New York? I don't know. But the Broncos, this is a really proud franchise. Just a bigger picture. They've been to 8 Super Bowls total. They've won 3. They've won with Elway, and they've won with Peyton Manning. And to now be in a situation where they're looking at their 8th straight year, I think, without making the postseason. I mean, that's almost unheard of. I mean, as good as that franchise has been, and so I'm surprised it's taken this long. I mean, they really just have plummeted since winning Super Bowl 50.
Yeah. I think it was Brock Osweiler who did it. Let's talk Ravens-Browns. Browns, obviously, they were missing a pretty big piece of their team in Deshaun Watson, but I think this was a big bounce back win for the Ravens. I think they really needed to win. They really needed to kick the shit out of the Browns, especially the Browns have a great defense, which I can't really imagine that the defense would have played as bad if Deshaun was in there. But it's a confidence builder for the Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say as a Ravens fan I was like, that I wanted to see Deshaun Watson play, but I was curious to see how this matchup was going to go if he played. I was curious to see where the Browns sort of are in their progression, and I was curious to see how the Ravens would respond to having to play on the road against a rising division rival off of a tough loss last week, and it was just a smothering from the start. Which again, they did what they were supposed to do. They suffocated a. I don't think Thompson Dorian is even a backup. I think he looked more like a third stringer. But the Ravens were a lot smarter today. I mean, they didn't have to do a whole lot. It's hard to tell. I think, like you said, yes, they needed to kick the crap out of Cleveland, but I don't know that I'm like taking away too much from this game that I'm feeling great about. It just feels like, yes, okay, now I at least still know that they can beat the teams that they're supposed to beat for the most part, although I thought they were supposed to beat the Colts and that didn't happen. So, look, here's how I look at it. The AFC North today, the Ravens point differential for today was plus 25. The Browns was obviously minus 25. The Bengals was minus 24, and the Steelers minus 24. So I don't know. I haven't looked at the exact standings now, but just by default, almost in virtue of how pitiful the rest of the division was today, the Ravens, they must feel like, the 72 Dolphins right now in that division.
Yeah. Quick update. Chiefs, Mahomes almost threw an interception again. 17-12 now. The Chiefs do have the ball. But the Jets are mounting a comeback. So maybe let's not speak too ill of the Jets. But we already have. I love speaking ill of the Jets. Bengals, Titans. What's wrong with the Bengals? Because the Titans are not that good. I don't care what anybody says. The Titans are not that good. The Bengals are broken, in my opinion. Very broken right now.
Yeah. I can't figure it. I mean, obviously, the only thing I can think of is obviously Burrow's injury is the easy take. And also just the Bengals have had bad offensive lines the last few years. Burrow's magic has helped them overcome that. It just feels like he's just constantly every play under duress. They're just completely out, and it's just deflating. And this was a complete annihilation by the Titans. Shades of it kind of reminded me, and I don't think that the story's going to end the same way, but a couple of years ago the Chiefs lost the game down in Nashville 27-3 around mid-season, and I think the Chiefs at that time were 3-4, and everyone thought, oh, Chiefs are broken. Mahomes is done for. They had a lost the Super Bowl the year before, and maybe it was just a hangover, and then they of course turned it around, won 8 of 9, and the regular season ended up in the AFC Championship game. Now, I don't think the same thing's going to happen for the Bengals, but I thought when they got Orlando Brown, I said, well, okay, they're really addressing this one area that the team has been truly lacking to be a championship team, which is a high performing offensive line, and it's just gone into the tank completely. And I don't know. I mean, it's not that you can say that Burrow's not the guy. I mean, he's obviously still a great player, but just wonder the combination of the injury. Does it become mental? You start thinking about it, and then you also start thinking, man, I got to change my mechanics. I got to change my approach because I've got this injury, and I know I've got an offensive line that's struggling. I mean, that's just a bad combination. And then, of course, if you're the Bengals defense, I mean, you can't possibly be expected to carry the team and they're scoring single digits, which is second time now this year that they've gotten 3 points, right? And they had 3 points in the opener, or maybe 7 points in the opener.
It was definitely single digits in the opener. It might have been 6.
6, and whatever it was. I mean, it was just 2 complete offensive failures in the first 4 games for the Bengals. Yeah. Well, what's your take? I mean, do you think it's injury, offensive line? Is it coaching? I mean, did I curse Zach Taylor when I saw him in person a few weeks ago? Maybe. I don't know.
You could have. You could have easily put a hex on him. So at the end of at the second half of the Rams game last week, it looked like they were back. I mean, it really did. They were humming. The offense was humming, and I have no clue what's wrong with this team. I mean, I saw them kind of figure it out at the end, and I was like, okay, maybe it was Burrow's injury, and Burrow said, he assured all the fans, I'm good, no setbacks, we're good to go. I feel like it's not mental. I feel like it's not Burrow's injury. I really think it's the offensive line. I mean, a quarterback can only deal with that for so long. Burrow isn't Andrew Luck size where he can take the hits. He isn't Lamar Jackson fast where he can avoid the hits. He's a great quarterback. He is a Tom Brady-esque quarterback, but we saw what Tom Brady was last year. with the horrible offensive line in Tampa. And
we
he
saw
was
what
old.
Tom Brady was. If you remember, and you probably don't remember back in 2009, but when Brady came back his first year after his ACL injury in 2008, he was not the same guy, certainly early in that season, just not quite the same Patriot offense. And that's when they had Randy Moss and Wes Welker still. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, well, they also, I think they missed the playoffs. They went like 8-8 the year after they won their first Super Bowl, if I'm not mistaken. So I think this does happen. Sorry,
yeah.
What'd you say?
I said the Patriots. Yeah, they went 9-7 right after their first Super Bowl. So, you think there's a hangover effect here for the Bengals?
I think it's a little bit of that. I think the problem with the NFL is, and I understand, the player safety is the utmost importance. Even to me, I think they should be, they should switch to turf or switch to grass because it's safer for the players. All the players can, most of them say yes. But I think the issue is they're not playing in the preseason. You look at years past, a lot of guys would play in the preseason. Now there was an every once in, very specific players. Peyton wouldn't play as much in the preseason, but most of the time they had their starters in warming up because you can't simulate in-game hits against another team in practice. I just don't think you can simulate that stuff. And the problem is, I mean, he hasn't gotten that the last 2 years. So it's not exactly surprising to me that this is happening.
I mean, Kira, it could be anything. I mean, this may just be his preseason. Look, I don't see the Bengals offense struggling like this all year. There's just no way. There's no way that they don't at least figure something out as far as, scheme-wise and getting it together. And like you said, we saw some glimpses of it last Monday night against the Rams. And we saw it, at times they had some plays against the Ravens in week 2, but it just felt like a major step back today for the Bengals, and you just start wondering, like, this type of Bengals team has no chance against the Chiefs or the Bills or even Miami. So I don't know that it's almost time to panic. I think you see 1 or 2 more games like this, and you really say that this year's team is not that same team. But we've seen teams have bad first quarters, even bad first halves of seasons, and it's you trust in the process, you trust in the players that you have. They still have a ton of talent. I still think Zach Taylor's a really good coach. Just think that this was, if you're a Bengals fan, you just hope this was rock bottom. When they thought week 1 was rock bottom, maybe that was the butt kicking they needed. This has got to be it. I mean, because for whatever reason, they just don't. They always seem to lose to the Browns. So it was a little easier to say, oh, okay, that was just typical. The Browns are in their head, whatever. And then they came back, played better the next 2 weeks. But then there's this, and this is like, oh my God, because you're right. Ryan Tannehill, the Titans, I'm not sold on that team at all. I like Mike Vrabel a lot as a coach, but how much talent can you squeeze out of that roster and that quarterback?
Yeah, absolutely. Buccaneers 26, Saints 9. I picked the Bucs to win this game. I think they've been underrated all year. I think Baker Mayfield has been underrated all year. He was 246, 3 touchdowns and a pick in this game. The Saints, you have an injured Derek Carr. That also really pushed me away from the Saints. I think the Saints would have had a better chance with Jameis just ripping it.
Right. I mean, how much did Jameis play in that game today?
Let's have a look here. Yeah, 1 attempt, 0 completion. Carr threw it 37 times with a sprained AC joint in his throwing shoulder.
Oh, we're talking Carr.
Yeah, Carr. Carr.
Of course. But no, I'm saying, but what were Winston's final numbers? Because obviously,
No, Winston. I might have cut out. Winston had 1 attempt.
Oh, Winston threw a late pick, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yeah.
But the game was already decided at that point. So
let me check. I think so. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean,
It was 26-9 at that point, anyways.
yeah, like you said, Winston not only just letting him air it out, but you don't think he wants to beat the Tampa Bay Bucks, you know? Because at times, if I'm not mistaken, Winston has had some moments that he's looked capable of being the guy for the Saints, but just never for long enough stretches of time. And
I'll
you
say
got to
this
think
with the Bucks when he had that 30-30 season, the 30 picks, 30 touchdowns. I want to say he set the record for most pass yards in a game against the Colts. They came back in that game, and then he is in like the top 10 in passing yards for a season all time. I mean, he has the capability to be a guy.
Yeah, he wouldn't have been the number one pick if he didn't. And I just, again, mentally, you just don't know what you're always getting from Jameis Winston. But, and if you're a Bucs fan, thank God that he threw, about 10 extra picks that year, because then he decided, hey, he's not the guy. Let's just go out and get Tom Brady. And you know how that turned out a year later for him. So not a good idea to have Carr start today with the sprained AC joint. I mean, look, it was also a little bit of a hangover type game for the Saints. They blew that big lead last week in Green Bay, and just, and when your quarterback struggles early like that, even for he struggled all game, but when you struggle early, it just throws the rhythm off sometimes. And I agree with you that Tampa Bay, maybe Tom Brady was the problem. Not likely, but the Bucs are not bad. And in that division, anything is truly possible for any of those teams.
Yeah, both South divisions, anything is possible. I will look at, let's see. So in the NFC South, you have a 3-1 Bucs team, 2-2 Falcons and Saints, and then 0-4 Panthers. And the AFC South, every team is 2-2. So every division has something that could be very possible, except for the Panthers, of course. We'll talk about them in like one more game. Commanders, Eagles. Commanders have the Eagles number. I'm telling you, they got it. I mean, they somehow got it. I don't know what it is. Sam Howell looked like a possible Pro Bowler today. And they came back late, and Eric Bieniemy, I mean, the man is making something out of nothing, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Commanders at least have Philly's number in Philly. They played well there the last few years.
Actually, just in Pennsylvania, because remember, they beat the Steelers, which I don't know if that was a home game or an away game, but they did beat the Steelers when they were 11-0, too.
That's right. So it could just be a Pennsylvania thing. I don't know. But they made a real push there at the end of the game, and it looked like when Hurts threw that late touchdown pass, oh, my God, well, nice try, Commanders, way to go. But Sam Howell, they let him down, and they lose on a 54-yard field goal or something. And
yeah,
the Howell ran the ball. I think he had 30, 40 yards rushing too. I mean, he made some plays with his legs, and McLaurin had a big game. So the Commanders, I don't know. I don't know how much stock you put into just the whole ownership change. The vibes are a little better. I mean, obviously last week was very, very ugly, losing to the Bills 37-3 or whatever it was, and they struggled to get by Arizona in week 1. But kind of just feel like they're team. I've always been a fan of Ron Rivera. I've always thought that he just seems to find a way to rally his guys. He's a good football coach. I think the more time the enemy works with Sam Howell, I'm not saying the Commanders are going to have some great magical season, but they will not be a pushover team most games. Last week they were, but most games they're going to be a team that kind of scraps and claws. So I think it stinks that they lost, but something to kind of hang your hat on moving forward. And I mean, Jalen Hurts just made the plays when he had to, and AJ Brown went off. That's kind of the story from that game.
Yeah. Vikings, Panthers, the 0-3 Vikings and the 0-3 Panthers met in this game. There's not, I can't say anything about either of these teams. The Vikings are going to continue to lose one-score games. They're 1-3 in one-score games now. And Frank Reich is his fans are already calling for his head. The Panther fans are calling for Frank Reich's head. 4 games into the Frank Reich era. I'm his biggest hater as a coach. I love him as a person. He seems like a great person. As a coach, he's not a good coach. Even I'm saying give him a chance. Just a chance. Because this team is horrible. He has nothing there.
I mean, yeah, I like Frank Reich as a person too. He's always has a place in your heart, either if you're a University of Maryland fan or a Buffalo Bills fan, playing days. But yeah, the Panthers are awful. Did they get an offensive touchdown today? I don't think they did, right? Maybe they had a pick, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe I'm thinking of something else. No, I think they scored early on a pick 6, and then it was just
they went up 7-0 on a pick 6.
Right. So again, you've got pretty modest numbers from Bryce Young. Yeah, what it was. I don't think he threw any interceptions, but the Vikings ran a fumble back. I feel like they still should be a little better. Adam Thielen, I remember he had a few big catches today. It's his old team, but again, I mean, the Panthers' saving grace is they're in the NFC South, even though they're 3 back now of Tampa Bay. But does anyone feel like in a 17-game season in Week 4, a 3-game lead is surmountable in that division? So
that can change very quickly.
Absolutely. I don't think the Bucs have played the Panthers yet. Maybe they did. I don't recall, but
I don't think so.
Then that might just be a season sweep waiting to happen, and Panthers turn things around. And then for Minnesota, I mean, that was their first win, and they got to play the Chiefs next week. But like Cousins had a pretty crummy day throwing the ball, didn't he? Have like 100-something yards. I think that's like
Bryce Young. Bryce Young threw 204 yards and was a leading passer in the game.
Right. I mean, Cousins, that you knew that team had to take a step back. All those crazy, undeserved wins they had last year, there was no way that things were not going to even out for the Minnesota Vikings. Just no way. And I don't know. I mean, Madison ran it well. I know the Vikings ran the ball pretty well. And the Cam Akers trade. I mean, that's like the Cam Akers trade to me almost just says, yeah, we know Kirk Cousins stinks. Let's just get more guys that can run the ball. That was just the more and more that we can do that doesn't involve Kirk Cousins throwing the ball. Let's just do that. That's what that trade said to me.
Does Cousins go to New York? Do you think he's going to go there?
No, because why would that? I mean, why even do that if you're the Jets? You take on, I don't know how much the contract they'd have to take on, but then is he really going to give them that much more of an upgrade over Zach Wilson? I know Zach Wilson had a tough go of it in 2+ years in the league, whatever. But I'm just not a Kirk Cousins fan at all. He asked me if I like it. No, I don't like that.
Quick update on the Jets. Mahomes just threw another pick, trying to drive down the field to get a field goal. So the Jets have the ball again. They're trying to get into field goal range. They just missed. Zerline just missed a field goal. They have one play to get in the field goal range. So Mahomes looks like a dog on the sideline. Just looks sick right now. And they also cut to Taylor Swift. So they're just trying to tell you that Taylor Swift is still at the game. We'll talk about Taylor Swift at the end too. Texans 30, Steelers 6. CJ Stroud is going to prove me wrong on Ohio State quarterbacks. And his team is horrible too. His offensive line is horrendous. Nico Collins is very good. I think he's going to be really good for them. Damon Pierce is just a monster. I love Damon Pierce. I loved him at Florida. And yeah, the Texans are the 2 teams that are projected to finish worst in the division might win the division. That's the AFC South for you.
Oh yeah, I just had a weird feeling that D'Amico Ryans was going to do a good job there. I mean, maybe it's not a weird feeling. I mean, I think Robert Saleh is a good coach. We could sit here and rip on the Jets, as a franchise all we want, right? And Zach Wilson, but he gets a lot out of his Jets team. And so I mentioned Robert Saleh because obviously he was a 49ers defensive coordinator that went on to be, a head coach. And here's D'Amico Ryans. So he's a good player too. I remember him playing with the Texans and the Eagles. And last year, I'm not surprised they fired Lovie Smith. I mean, I'm a little surprised they did the whole one and done thing like 2 years in a row. It's just a weird thing for a franchise to do. But even last year, and I had a chance to see the Texans one game in person, and they had the personality of a team that wanted to fight. They looked like a young and hungry team, and so they weren't discouraged. They lost to your Colts. They lost badly to my Ravens the first week of the season, and they have really turned it around. And I feel like they've got their quarterback, probably. Right? I think a 300-yard game against the Steelers, because I thought the Steelers after week one they got waxed, and it's nobody rallies a team like Mike Tomlin, right? And nobody they never count the Steelers out. And then they had 2 wins. They beat Vegas last week and the Browns, and you're like, okay,
the Browns in the ugliest game I've ever seen. Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and marred by the Chubb injury, and then last week against Vegas they kind of hung on, but you're like, okay, yeah, this is what we figured. The Steelers, young quarterback year 2, because how it went with Roethlisberger. I'm not saying Kenny Pickett's not Roethlisberger, but you figure, well, he's he took some strides. He looked good, showed some moxie last year. And then he goes out and throws for like 115 or 120 yards or something in that range today. No touchdown. They brought in Trubisky late in the game. The Steelers did. And we could sit here and we could rip on the Steelers, or we could say, you know what? Boy, the Texans, what do they have, like 450, 475 yards, something like that I saw on offense today? I mean, like, oh my God, now the Texans, because we always thought like, oh, Texans, they never can score points. They always kind of have to win with defense. And now it was just a dominant effort today. And I think they've got some confidence. And you're right. Why not in that division? Jacksonville does not impress me at all. I know they won today, but Colts, solid. Any teams could win the division, even Tennessee, who I was just ripping on. But I think Houston is like the most upbeat team in that division, right? Because they're the ones that had such a bad year last year, and they've got the young number 1 pick at quarterback. I think this is I don't know if it's a statement win, but this is kind of like a watershed moment for the Texans.
Yeah, they had 451 total yards, 24 first downs. Let's see, 312 passing total. I mean, and Stroud doesn't turn the ball over. Hasn't turned the ball over yet. I hate to say it because I just absolutely despise the Texans. I think he's going to be a monster. And I hope the best for the kid. Like I do. He got so much shit coming out of the draft for whatever test score that he took. And, everyone doubts Ohio State quarterbacks. I did too. But I hope the best for him. I hope he loses every single game he plays against the Colts, but wins every single one after that. It only helps me, right? It's got to beat the division teams too.
Yeah, remember we were talking in the preview and you were like, oh, the Colts will definitely win 2 of those division games this year, and they'll beat Houston, which they did, and because it was like, well, that should be a gimme. And a couple weeks ago, it looked like a gimme. Now it's like, oh, well, you're Houston, you got to beat like Tennessee. You can't lose that game, whatever. But I'm happy for the Texans. Look, the Texans are the only team of the 32 in the entire NFL that's never played in a conference championship game. And this is not like they're not expansion team anymore. This is their 22nd year in the league.
Yeah. Got to do it at some point. It could be coming the next couple of years. Raiders, Chargers, 24, Chargers, 17, Raiders. This game felt like it was over until it wasn't. The Chargers were up 24-7. into the third. Yes, into the third. And then it just kind of felt like the Raiders were chipping away, and they just fall short. Aiden O'Connell, I don't know who the hell this kid is, but he showed some real moxie there, a lot of poise in the pocket. Um, Getting Devontae Adams back from that injury that he had was big. But the Chargers are just the Chargers. I mean, this is a game that shouldn't have even been close. Not at all.
They are pathetic. I mean, I would rather be. I have an uncle who is a Chargers fan, and it is just the same. They are. I mean, I want to say they're a waste of talent, but I'm not sure how much talent they actually have. I mean, it feels like it because Herbert's pretty good, but there is just a culture. It's just like a deficiency in the culture there, and I mean, it doesn't even feel like the Chargers belong in Los Angeles. I mean, right there, they feel like a nomad to me. They just feel like a team that is just constantly just playing out the string. It doesn't feel like there's any drive or accountability or like a big fan base rooting them on that they're trying to win for. They find ways to make games interesting when they shouldn't be. And so their legacy today was they almost got to be the team that blew a 17-point lead to a guy that I'd never heard of. O'Connell doesn't sound like a football player, but hey, good for him. He put up pretty decent numbers, right? I mean, great.
Yeah, he was like 200 something yards. I mean, not bad at all.
Yeah, right. And if it wasn't for Khalil Mack with 6 sacks, the Chargers probably lose that game. And one ex-Raider helped the Chargers basically survive the game because Herbert's numbers were very modest, when I recall. They were like nothing special, like under 200, threw a pick. I mean, they ran it well. They kind of had to, but that just is a team that oh man, I mean, it's got to be so frustrating to support more than any other team. Maybe Atlanta would be the other team you could compare. I mean, those teams are like the Spider-Man meme, right? They point at each other in the mirror.
Yeah.
That's the Chargers and Falcons. My God.
Well, the Chargers and Falcons played each other a couple of years ago, and neither team wanted to win the game.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And they played each other in 2016. And I remember this because it was the year that the Falcons made the Super Bowl, and it was the year that the Chargers lost to the 0-14 Browns. And lo and behold, the Chargers won the game because I think the Falcons went for it on 4th and 1 at like their own 30 in overtime. And the Chargers just said, finally, all right, we'll take the win. I thought you wanted it. I don't really want it, but we'll take it. Right? That's the Charger mentality. All right, well, I guess we win the game. Hey, great. Not, go get them next week. And they're 2-2, right? You just looked at it, you're like, oh, okay, they're 2-2. But it's just, there's nothing awe-inspiring. I mean, last week it was Vikings clock mismanagement that allowed the Chargers to escape, and I mean escape with a win after Brandon Staley went for it on 4th and 1 in his own territory, just like in that game I was describing, right? And he did that last year, and I know it worked. They beat the Browns, but I don't get it. I just don't get that team at all. All I know is that the Raiders aren't very good. Some things never change. Josh McDaniels is, well, maybe Tom Brady's going to be coaching that team by the end of the year. Who knows?
Yeah, this was a matchup of coaches who I don't know how they've kept their jobs. I mean, they're doing a great job at just keeping their jobs somehow. I'm not praising the Raiders in this game either. I don't want it to sound like that. Their offensive line is horrible. It is so bad. I mean, Jimmy G was like that. That's the reason he went out. It was the offensive line's inability to play, and they were just bad. They were so bad. It's hard to watch at this point. Both of these guys should be left on the tarmac. Like Lane Kiffin, I think. Both of them on the tarmac.
It's funny because I remember when Lane Kiffin was fired, and the Raiders actually at that time looked like they were making a little bit of a of a push, to be a better team because they had been really bad under that 1 year that Art Shell was there, and then Al Davis just up and fired him, and I don't think Mark Davis has much more sensibility to run a football than his dad did. But God, that division, I mean, it's tough because it's someone that just is already very over seeing the Chiefs win. You just look at that division, and Denver is going nowhere fast. The Raiders are just pitiful, and then the Chargers are what we just described. They're just an average team playing average football and having about an average amount of heart, and so I don't see the Chiefs having any resistance in the AFC West.
Yeah. Another shitty game. Patriots, Cowboys, Bill Belichick's worst loss in his career as a head coach. Mac Jones got benched. What is there? I mean, I don't even think this was really the Cowboys defense. This was a showing for the Cowboys defense. 2 defensive touchdowns. Just horrible. I mean, the Patriots they need to move from Mac, I think. I think it's time.
Yeah, again, I was always ready to see the Patriots dynasty end and unravel, but it's almost sad to see how bad they've become. You figured it would just be fun to see them just be like an average team or even a team that, was on the fringe of the playoffs and then we could enjoy them losing, kind of like the Yankees in baseball. But they look bad. I mean, really bad. Today, they look bad. I mean, the first couple of weeks, they kind of stayed close with Philly. They stayed close with Miami, and then they beat the Jets. And I was like, okay, Belichick, typical, right? Like first quarter of the season, a little bumpy road, and then he kind of gets it going. But you got to wonder about not just Mac Jones, but how about Belichick? What happens if the Pats have a bad year? Do they dare think about firing him? I doubt they'd fire him, but maybe coaxing him into an early retirement.
I'll tell you this. If the Patriots want to move on from Bill Belichick, I will take him. As the Colts fan, I will take him on the Colts. I'll do it charity. We'll make it easy. It's an easy switch. All right, we'll send Steichen over to the Pats. I'll take Belichick. I'll be perfectly fine with that. I'm being nice to Pats fans, and it's not for my own interest whatsoever. It's not because I hate Steichen. I will take Bill Belichick.
Yeah, well, who wouldn't take Bill Belichick? I mean, that's the funny thing is the Pats might say we want to move on from him, but then there's 31 other teams, but there's a large number of other teams.
Probably 25. I think I had the discussion, 25 other teams.
He would be, hey, as a Ravens fan, I've seen Harbaugh for feels like almost as long as Belichick. I know it's about 8 years left, but I would say, hey, I'll give that a shot.
Yeah. Yeah, coaching. I think coaching in the league has really taken a downturn. There's no common sense anymore. Everyone wants to reinvent the wheel. Seriously, they want to change the way things were done. When you throw the ball a lot, that's fine. You want to throw the ball. But they changed things about time management. I mean, I think every single coach should play Madden in the offseason and just work on 2-minute drills and time management because that is realistic football. The rest of the stuff, you're throwing the ball 70 times a game in Madden. That's not realistic, but time management is. They need to work on that.
Yeah, why not? Video games, that's a good way to kind of
simulate it.
I was thinking about that for playing like rec league baseball. The more I play, I was like, oh, maybe I'll get better at learning how to hit a slider just by trying to gauge the movement of it in video games. Maybe the coaches can learn a lot. They can learn about and not by cheating and hitting the Ask Madden button, but just figuring it out on their own.
You would hope they wouldn't hit that.
Well, before you jump to any of the late games, I think we should touch on the Thursday game because that was, speaking of coaching and guys that people love, although he didn't really get off to a great start, but Dan Campbell and the Lions, man, they really, after getting down a field goal early, they just throttled the Packers, didn't they, man?
Dan Campbell is the one guy I will accept the crazy bullshit from. The going for it on 4th and 1, the fake field goal from deep in your own territory against the Kansas City Chiefs. He's the one guy I'll accept from it because he is a psycho and that works for that team. They are 3-1 right now. They look great. Now I know if they take a downturn in a year, let's say they go to the playoffs this year and they go to the NFC Championship or they go to the Super Bowl, and next year they have a down year, his head is going to be called for almost immediately. I love him. He's a gimmick. It's a gimmick. He is a guy that will get everybody to get up, get ready and play. Like you will get up for him. At the same time, he makes a lot of dumb decisions. A lot of them. And that
Oh
normally I
yeah,
wouldn't be able to stand. But it's him. I can deal with it because it's him.
Yeah, his first season is what stands out. I guess it was 2 years ago. I mean, he had that forget what the exact sequence was, but it was on Thanksgiving against the Bears, and it was just like he didn't know the rules about timeouts or something, and it was just Lions buffoonery that you've seen if you're a Lions fan your entire life. But
yeah,
I will say this, okay? There's the X's and O's part of football. There's the strategy, there's the mastermind, and then there is the human, emotion part. There is the culture, the confidence, the belief that you can instill in your team. And the fact that he has been able to really turn the Detroit Lions into a team that not only is doing well, obviously they're 3-1, and I think they are the odds on. I'd be shocked if they don't win the NFC North. But they believe that they're good. This isn't like because the Lions, you look back, believe me, I mean, they had a year they were 6-2 back in 2007. And I think that was Rod Marinelli, good pasta dish. And they finished that year 1-7. And then they went 0-16 the next year. I mean, you talk about like, oh my God, the Lions are 6-2. But it was never like, oh, this team is really good. This team believes. This team is ready to put itself in the upper echelon of the league even before they actually get there. And that is where Dan Campbell's brilliance, shines brightest, I think. And in that game, I mean, here's just the bottom line too. You've got a number 1 overall pick at quarterback. So you traded one to get another, and say what you want. I know Stafford won a Super Bowl, got the Rams there, but they didn't play well in the Super Bowl against the Pats. But they have a very talented number 1 overall pick playing quarterback. They've got themselves what I think is a bell cow running back. Montgomery had he had 3 touchdowns. He had like 120 something yards. And they've got a few playmaking receivers. And they've got at least one true defensive cornerstone. So there are a lot of reasons to believe that the Lions are going to be really good. I know we should be talking a little bit about the Packers because they were involved in this game too. But I think for the Packers, I think they just little bit of a letdown after that big comeback. I still think Jordan Love looks pretty good. The Packers look like they'll be a scrappy team. They'll probably fight for a playoff spot. Better than Rodgers did his first full year.
Yeah. So you look at the Lions and the way they started the game, it was like, oh my God, it's the same old Lions. Like, oh my God. Like they, Goff throws the interception, Packers go up 3, and it's like, okay, well, it's back to normal. That was a fun little 3-game stretch. But then they they turned on the gas. Like they were like, okay, yeah, that's cute. You want to kick a field, pick us off, kick a field goal? We'll go we'll go up 27-3. That's by the end of the half. I mean, they put the gas on, and that really solidified, I think, in the eyes of the world that the Lions, who are so historically bad, beat the crap out of the Packers, who are so historically good.
Yeah. And it was it's a very important game for the Lions because if you look at it, I think that's based on where the NFC North is now. That is probably the toughest division game on their schedule. You may be at Minnesota is also tough, but the Bears, that should be 2 absolute rollover wins. They would get the Packers at home, and they should have a better chance playing them at home than at Lambeau. And Minnesota's down team this year. So this was one with the Packers coming off the big win and being 2-1. The timing where the Lions, it was like, okay, yeah, we saw what you did in prime time against the Chiefs, but remember, no Kelsey, no Jones. And then they lost to Seattle. They beat Atlanta, but it's like, okay, well, let's see you do it again. And then they went on the road, and after that early pick in the field goal, they just, throttled the Packers. The Packers made a little bit of a game of it, got it to within 10, but I think this Lions team is legit. I do. I don't know exactly where they stack up against the 49ers, the Eagles, maybe the Cowboys, but mark my words, they are winning the NFC North. I have zero doubt in my mind.
I'm going to say something extremely crazy, and it's not in relation to the Lions or the Packers. The Jets are about to possibly tie the game with the Chiefs. That's crazy. This is insanity. Wow. Zach Wilson scrambling. He might get there. He dives. Oh, my God. Zach Wilson just tied the game.
Well, I'm glad I'm on the Jersey Turnpike, so I'm glad I'm not hitting any. I'm glad those fans haven't filed out of the stadium just yet, because I think I was driving too the week of the that 40-0 game too. I said, my God, I said that you have same thing. Giants fans are going to be on the road an hour after that game started, but good for the Jets. Hey, I mean, I would love to see them pull the upset, but at least they're making a game of it.
Yeah. And then also, I guess one last thing on the Lions. When they beat the Chiefs, somebody said it was an asterisk win because Kelsey and Jones were out. And I said, how many wins for other teams, playoff teams, Super Bowl champions, have there been when players are out? That is a part of football. I don't understand how it's a, quote, asterisk win, in my opinion.
Oh, my God. I mean, that's what a jerky thing to say. I mean, there have been seasons like where teams have, I think it was 2 years ago, I think the Chiefs, it was 2021, I think, they played the Packers, and that was the one game that Aaron Rodgers was declared inactive because he had coronavirus and he wasn't vaccinated. I mean, they beat the Packers.
He was immunized. He was immunized.
He was immunized. Not vaccinated. He was immunized, thankfully, with his horse tranquilizer or whatever. But that was, the Packers were 13-4 that year. And so it's like, oh, well, yeah. And the Chiefs didn't win the Super Bowl that year. But the point being, it's like, of course, it's part of the game. You want to play 17 games in a season, guess what? You're going to have more games that guys are missing with injuries now. And guys, even if they're not injured, they might say, well, heck, I just need a game off. There's more games. Not the games don't mean quite as much. So, yeah, it would have been nice to see the Lions do it when Kelsey was there. I get it. And, props, because it means that Travis Kelce really is a great player who just changes the dynamic of the offense. But you're right. Give me a break. That doesn't cheapen it. I think the Lions could, beat them. The game was in Kansas City, right? What if they were playing them fully healthy, but it was in Detroit? That gives the Lions an edge. So, yeah, I don't want to hear that, Huey.
Yeah. All right, last game. Cardinals, 49ers. A little bit. I would say the Cardinals gave a little bit of a fight. I'm going to give them – the Cardinals are the friskiest team in the league to me. Josh Dobbs is quietly like an above-average quarterback, which is pretty good. At one point, it was 21-16 San Francisco after the first half – or, in the second half. So that's a win for Arizona right there, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, you had to expect that Arizona would probably have a letdown because they played a couple really tight games, and then they had that big rousing upset win against Dallas last week. You kind of figured they were going to be a little bit, maybe just out of emotion or whatever. But they hung in there. They did, yeah. And Josh Dobbs, I remember, he played okay. They played that last game last year for Tennessee against Jacksonville on the Saturday night. That was for the division, and it was I think it was a late, was it either a pick six or a strip sack that Walker ran back, and Jags ended up winning. But Josh Dobbs, yeah, he's a ball player. But hey, too much CMC, 49ers, right? That McCaffrey had 4 touchdowns total. I think he had 3 rushing, 1 receiving, and Brock Purdy, I saw his numbers. He had 1 incompletion.
Yeah.
Frisky, yeah. Like defensively, competition today? No.
I'm gonna say something. I think Christian McCaffrey is the best all-around player in the NFL right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'd say that's hard to disagree with. He is absolutely just a game changer. I mean, we almost saw him play quarterback in the NFC Championship game, right? With the
Yeah.
helmet on.
No, we did.
Wouldn't have
I
been
think we
surprised.
did.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't recall if he threw any passes or just handing off. That 49ers are teams. Are they on a mission? I mean, every team's on a mission, but are they really determined to say, okay, they should have been there last year? They have the team, and that game just turned into a sad state of affairs in the NFC Championship game. But Niners are 4-0, and they get Dallas next week. That's the Thursday or Monday? I can't recall, but it's a primetime game next week.
So, and I'll say this about Brock Purdy. So I think he kind of gets a lot of slack because he is surrounded by this fantastic team. I mean, you have, I'll go over the names. You have Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, who just returned. I mean, Ray McLeod could be like a number 2 on another team. George Kittle, Ronnie Bell, Kyle Juszczyk, who is like, bring back the fullback, please. Bring the fullback back.
Love Kyle Juszczyk. Yes, love Kyle Juszczyk. And I know one thing for a fact, 2 things. Kyle Juszczyk's smart. He went to Harvard too. He's got a good sense of humor because I once saw him at a Kevin Nealon comedy show. So I know he's a good guy. But they have they have so much talent on that roster. I mean, I would say the 49ers have to have the most talented roster in the NFL, right? I mean, even if you don't think Purdy, like, it's hard to compare Purdy to Patrick Mahomes, but just top to bottom, the 49ers are so stacked.
Yeah. About Brock Purdy, he has all those weapons. But when you look at Josh Johnson was a quarterback, he's traveled everywhere. He's been everywhere. Josh Johnson looked like absolute garbage. He couldn't do anything when he was brought into that NFC Championship game, which maybe it was the emotions, but I think that does show the difference between what Brock Purdy is and what an actual, undrafted or Mr. Irrelevant really is. Because Purdy's better than that.
Yeah, and it's like, well, remember when they had Alex Smith and the whole thing was like, oh, he's a game manager, he's not that good. And that may have been true. Okay, and those were different 49ers teams. They were talented 49ers teams. They were more, those were teams that kind of got by on their grit. And I say teams. I mean, I'm really thinking like 2011, for example, before we saw Kaepernick. Yeah. But Brock Purdy, he's not just a game manager, but most times that's all he really needs to be. Because think about it, you're not, Mr. Irrelevant, last pick in the draft, 3rd string quarterback, coming in on this great team. Are you just going to come in and be like, I'm the freaking man and I'm going to sling the ball around? You say, no, I mean, I'm just going to use this incredible dearth of talent around me. And I'm going to go out and just make the plays that they need me to make. It's not, oh, he's just a game manager. It's just he doesn't have to. If he tried to do too much, if he, they were calling plays where he's bombing the ball down the field, well, that would just be counterproductive for a team as talented as the 49ers. So I think Brock Purdy is potentially, we don't even know for sure. It's hard to say because he's on such a great team. I think he could potentially be a very good NFL quarterback.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. All right, well, let's wrap it up. Thank you all for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed another Football Sunday. Whether your team's 0-4 or they're 4-0, it's football. It's still here. We have another 17 weeks of this, including the Super Bowl, maybe more. So just learn to appreciate it. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, the whole thing. Check out our website, chaoticallyintolerant.com, for all of our content. And thank you, Michael, for jumping on, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, sounds good. Always fun to do it.